Today on our Recipients podcast series, I'm talking with the outstanding Shane Hryhorec. And I've been wanting to meet Shane for a couple of years. Shane's been around the National Awards for Disability Leadership for a little while and has been a finalist a couple of times. But this time he's a recipient. Exciting stuff. So let me tell you a little bit about Shane. Shane connects communities, councils, surf lifesavers clubs and people with disability around Australia to make over 50 Australian beaches more accessible. He regularly delivers beach access training and workshops, lived experience advisory, hosting community accessible beach days, organising equipment tests and trials, and has created a free online accessible beach and waterway directory. Suddenly I want to go to the beach. Yeah, okay, fantastic. And the award that Shane has received in the 2021 National Awards for Disability Leadership is the Innovation Award. This award is for achieving outcomes to the status of disabled people by working outside the box, developing new systems, technology, or tools. And I think you'd have to agree that Shane has actually been doing that, the whole beach access thing. It's really fantastic. Congratulations, Shane, on receiving the award, and thanks so much for making time for speaking to us today.
Thank you so much. After that introduction, now I feel like going to the beach also.
Well, okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's
Let's
do
stop doing this and let's head off the beach.
it. Not sure about the 13-degree weather outside though, but yeah.
No, it's a much nicer day where I am in Canberra, but it's still very much not beach weather. Not beach
Yeah.
weather. That's okay. Beach weather will return. It will come. It will come. What got you into this one, Shane? Why beaches? What's that about? Why do you think it's important to have accessible beaches, and why have you ended up being this person?
Yeah, well, I grew up in South Australia in Adelaide, and um, uh, when I was in Adelaide growing up, I didn't have a disability. One of the activities I participated in was surf life saving for a surf life saving club called Grange on the coast, and I used to be participant in the Nippers program growing up. So I used to go to the beach a couple times a week, and it was really something that I enjoyed and loved doing. And my parents lived by the beach, so I grew up down by the beach, and going to the beach was something I was very used to doing, and it was very much part of my life. And then I had an accident in 2007 where I broke my neck in a swimming pool and drowned. And after I recovered from that, I started thinking about the things that I could and couldn't do. And one of those things I just assumed that I wouldn't be able to do again was enjoy the beach. And I sort of just parked that out of my mind after I come up with the idea that, the beach is out of bounds. And then it wasn't until about 10 years later when probably not quite 10, about 6 years later, and I set up a company called Push Mobility, and we're providing equipment for people with disabilities. And not long after I started that company, I started seeing social media posts around the world of beaches becoming accessible with pathways for people with disabilities to wheel along and accessible car parking. And then that's what made me think, I'm like, well, how come we don't have that here? How do we have beach access in Australia? And literally, as soon as I saw those social posts, I started investigating and researching, finding companies that manufacture products and reaching out to them. And so we started a journey and started bringing product into Australia that helps towards making beaches accessible. But then I realized that there's more to beach access than rolling out a pathway or providing a beach wheelchair. It's also stuff like car parking and footpaths and infrastructure. And then you talk about education for people working with people with disabilities on beaches, like surf lifesavers. So yeah, I decided that it would be the best thing for us to do to create a charity. We created Accessible Beaches Australia, which is advocating towards changing our beach landscape to make it more inclusive. So that's how it all started.
And it was something I'm really always interested in. We don't just get to the point where we're at this advanced stage where we're receiving awards and being noticed for the work that we're doing. There's barriers, there's things along the way. You've just mentioned a couple of those. The fact that it isn't just about going onto a beach, is you've also got to have a car park. What barriers have you come across in doing this work, and how did you address them, or how were they over, worked through so that it could become a reality? Were there people who just didn't think that people should be going to beaches if they're disabled? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'd even hear it from other people with disabilities. Like I've known of some high-profile people with disabilities doing presentations to councils and saying, look, we just need to come to terms that the beaches are just not accessible. They're not going to be accessible, which baffles me. But there are always barriers. There's barriers to access for everything, not just with beaches. And I mean, I do presentations to councils on beach access, and they run for about 3.5 hours. And I run a segment on barriers, and literally, and some of them are like, we have a plan to make our beach accessible by 2050, and so it's, in other words, it's a pipeline. And we usually hear people like, we're currently investigating, but it feels like people spend forever investigating, and then other people say, yes, we're an accessible beach. We have a beach wheelchair. It's stored in a storeroom, hasn't been pulled out or serviced, and we don't tell anybody about it. So there's many different reasons or excuses we hear about, and barriers to why beach access can't happen. And to be honest with you, a lot of it comes down to attitude, and local government, surf saving clubs, not having leaders to make that change.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, isn't it? So much of what we do in the disability rights movement and the disability community is some of that basic stuff, like, access to housing and having appropriate supports and those sorts of things that fundamentally keep us alive and fed and washed. Is it easy for others to think that going to the beach is like a nice extra? And we're talking about, fundamentally, we're talking about leisure here. But right at the beginning, you were talking about being a nipper, and being part of the Surf Lifesaving program, which is a big part of Australian culture. Anyone who lives in a beachside community is usually going to have something to do with the local surf club. Has it been difficult to get people to take it seriously, that we have as much right to access leisure and going to the beach, or even being part of the lifesaving club, as anyone else?
Yeah, look, I think I don't think there's a big challenge getting people to take it seriously. I just think it's a big challenge getting action. And I feel that a lot of the time, sort of local government look at it as too big of a problem and hoping someone else will just deal with it. But once you break it down into little pieces, it's like beach access is not really that hard. And there are organizations out there like our own, like Accessible Beaches, that can help guide local government through the journey and the process. And there are really great networks now for councils to connect with other councils that have made their beaches accessible. So a lot of it comes down to the will drive, and it brings us back down to that leadership again, about having a goal for the council, goal for the community to be like, you know what, let's make our beach accessible. And how do we do that? A great example, for instance, was Hervey Bay. We ran a beach access event in Hervey Bay, and it was one of 4 events that we ran over 4 days. And Hervey Bay was the last day, and we thought it would be like a holiday for us. We'd just roll out the matting and no one was going to rock up. And because the social media chatter for the event prior was very quiet, we had busloads of people with disabilities that we did not expect. And the community were like, we've been fighting for beach access for ages. We've been even fighting for curve cuts in our community, and we can't even get them. And the mayor, the newly appointed mayor, who'd been the mayor for 1 day, I think, arrived at the event, and he was like, this is amazing. How come we don't have this already? We brought product there to make the beach accessible for the 1 day. And he was like, what can we do for you to leave it here? Like, we don't want you to take it away, because now that you've given us this taste of access and inclusion on beaches, we don't want it gone. And what the amazing thing from that is that we then packed up and left, and we did a lot of work with the council in regards to providing information and product for them through Push Mobility to make the beach accessible. But I went back there about a year later, and that beach that I went to was not recognizable. They literally fast track funding design, they redeveloped the entire foreshore of that whole area to make it more accessible and inclusive. And the thing that was really great about that is it has a ripple on effect.
Yes.
So once you make the beach accessible, then all the businesses say, okay, great, well, what can we do to make ourselves more accessible? And the council go, well, actually, let's have a look at our footpaths. Can we improve the curb cuts? So I guess one of the things that, one of the barriers is attitude, but once you start, it can have great change in the community. And I think that's one of the things I like most about beach access is it's not about the beach. It's about the effect the beach has on the community and the rest of the businesses and even people that make decisions like the councillor or the mayor in this circumstance.
It's interesting, isn't it? It is a community thing. And what impact do you think receiving this award will have on that work?
Hopefully it brings more attention to beach access generally. I guess we've been very fortunate over the years because we work with councils that want to make change. We don't go up to anyone and say, you have to change your beaches to make it accessible. We encourage people to make change. And when they're ready, they usually reach out to Accessible Beaches and say, hey, look, we're ready to finally make our beach inclusive for people with disabilities. How do we do it? Can you help us? And we help them. So any promotion and any recognition to the charity will only help the cause, which is really great.
Fantastic. Yeah. So what's next for Shane Hryhorec?
More beaches. There's 360 patrolled beaches in Australia, and we want to improve access to every single one of them one way or another. Some of them, because of the landscape, you can't really, there's steps getting down and you can build around that. But until you overcome those barriers, there are things that can improve at every beach: car parking, footpaths, barbecue areas, and so on. So definitely going to continue working on accessible beaches and I guess, I explained it earlier, but like when you make a beach accessible, it has a positive impact on that community. So the more beaches that we can improve access to, then the more communities benefit as well.
It's lovely. I'm thinking of some of the beaches I've been near in the last 5 or so years, and the lovely esplanade things along the front. But getting across to the restaurants behind that and being able to navigate your way up and down the footpaths, it can be a real challenge. So I'm looking forward to a more accessible beach culture in Australia. Thank you, Shane. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I like to finish off with a final question, which is, who is a leader you admire and why?
I'm just trying to think of all the politicians I can think of, and I don't aspire to any of them right now.
Well,
But
what about someone who's
trying
not a politician?
to, actually, my late friend Stella Young, she was a huge advocate for people with disabilities and a really good friend of mine, and I looked up to her and always aspired to be a person with disability like her, to be able to help contribute to the community of people with disabilities. And I think the idea is that if we are in a position to make positive change, then it's also our obligation to do so, and that's something she taught me.
Fantastic. And in fact, yes, the fabulous Stella, whom we all miss
Yeah.
very much so. Thank you so much, Shane Hryhorec, for joining us today, for talking to us about receiving the National Award for Disability Leadership 2021 for Innovation. It's been wonderful to meet you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your time. Awesome.